First round draft capital is always a plus for a fantasy prospect, but we're not too sure about the group of edge players who went in this year's first round. Should you skip on that group altogether and find upside later? We've got some candidates who just might deliver league-altering upside in the later rounds of your rookie draft. Find out who they are on an all-new Draft Sharks podcast right now. Matt Schaff and Shane Hallam of DraftSharks.com here to talk some key players in your rookie IDP rankings, plus some rookie IDP sleepers you might be able to snag later in your rookie drafts. Shane, let's just jump right in at linebacker. It doesn't look like a high impact class at that position overall. We already talked a good bit about Jihad Campbell ahead of the draft. He was the only true off-ball linebacker to go in round one to Philly at 31st overall. You know, gotta love the outlook for him as a player, and certainly landing in a defense that probably has opportunity immediately with Nakobe Dean injured again. But the top of round two didn't make us wait too much longer for that next linebacker. It was Carson Schwesinger going with the first pick of round two to the Browns. We're all wondering, beginning of day two of the draft, which quarterback are they going to take to start off this round? None of them. They're going to take a linebacker from UCLA who only had one starting season, but really made it count. We talked about him ahead of the draft. There's a lot to like here, right?
There is a lot to like about Carson Schwesinger, especially from an IDP perspective. He's someone who is such a great wrap-up tackler, really smart player. We talked pre-draft on the pod about him being a walk-on, and he probably would have been recruited had it not been for COVID and all the wonkiness around that. So when you watch him, you see rarely makes a mistake. He can kind of do everything. I think the intriguing part for him in the NFL is going to be where he fits, on this Browns defense. Maybe more of a weak side linebacker to over Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah. But if you're drafting a guy at the top of round two, the first pick, I think it'd be hard pressed if he has the skill set to play Mike that maybe eventually he takes over for Jordan Hicks and kicks inside, and that would be really nice for all of us.
Yeah, my guess is that he plays in the middle because the one question with him was speed. It seems like he's fast enough just on tape, but if a guy's not running the 40, that says that he doesn't want to show exactly what his time is in that particular area. But, like I said, plenty of production. Love the draft capital here. And ultimately, I don't know how much it matters exactly which spot he settles at because of where the Browns took him. It says that they're going to play him as soon as he's ready. And he seems like the kind of guy who should be ready right away. Cross-category scorer in college too. So we love that from the IDP standpoint. It might also tell us something about Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah's recovery from the neck injury. That's already in question. Maybe this signals to us that the Browns are worried about it. We'll have to watch that situation as summer develops, though, and see if JOK is going to be ready for this season. Next in round two, though, was a more surprising pick at linebacker, Demetrius Knight Jr., 17th in that round to the Bengals, the third non-edge linebacker drafted after Campbell and Schwesinger. I sure wasn't expecting that, Shane. We mentioned him on the previous show. Like, the size is good, a high-level speed score, nice production the past 2 years. So all of that looks good, but the problem is he didn't break out until he was 23. And then beyond that existing question, we'll call it, not even an issue, but a question at the very least, you have to wonder if he's even going to be better than his classmate who ended up joining the Bengals with him, Barrett Carter, who they drafted out of Clemson in round 4, a little smaller, significantly slower, but might be a better football player. What do you think on both Knight and this situation now?
I had Barrett Carter ranked higher pre-draft from my film analysis. Like you said, I think Knight has the upside with the speed and the size potentially to be a little more impactful, but we've seen players like that if they just can't play. I think Barrett Carter certainly can play. So we see with the new Al Golden defense with the Bengals, they might be moving to more 3 linebacker looks. Maybe that's why they drafted Knight, that he could fill in on that strong side. They could kind of move around those players, and Barrett Carter might back up Logan Wilson in the middle. I'm still not thrilled either way. I just don't see Demetrius Knight playing a full complement of snaps here. Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson are going to do that for the short and long term, it seems like. So I think we both felt when he was drafted, he was overdrafted and the fit was a little bit strange.
Yeah, the Bengals didn't seem to get it right in this draft, and we'll talk about another pick later in this show. And, you mentioned Jermaine Pratt. He's going to have to leave the team for there to be immediate opportunity for whichever linebacker proves ready to help out. There's been some talk about Pratt being a trade candidate, but that hasn't happened yet. I doubt that they would just release him because I don't think that they need to salary-wise. So I think that even if Knight gets on the field early, it's like you said, he's probably looking at a part-time role in a strong side type of spot. Just not interesting. And unless Pratt does leave, I'm really a total pass on Knight in IDP rookie drafts. I'd rather just wait on some linebackers that we're going to talk about coming up. We'll move on to post round 2 sleeper picks at linebacker. There are several guys that I'm intrigued by, Shane, but who do you have up first as your favorite sleeper at the position beyond that round 2 range?
My favorite sleeper was Cody Simon, linebacker out of Ohio State, going to the Arizona Cardinals in the 4th round. He had 112 tackles this year for the Buckeyes, played that traditional Mike role that we've seen get a lot of that production. And he's someone I had rated a little bit lower than where he went, but I think has good skill set for IDP. He's kind of a see ball, hit ball, good wrap up tackler. He's not someone you're going to drop back into coverage. He's not someone you're going to ask to run and fill in the edge. But in terms of kind of that old school style, just anything that comes between the tackles and the line of scrimmage, I think Cody Simon can clean that up really well. I like the situation. Mac Wilson, the journeyman linebackers in front of him, who I think has never lived up to expectations and always feels upgradable. So if Cody Simon proves that he belongs, I think he's someone that either with an injury to Wilson or maybe even midseason could end up being the inside linebacker there for the Cardinals.
Really shocking for Shane to pick an Ohio State player here.
just a big shock emoji face right on the thumbnail there.
What? Yeah, you mentioned Mac Wilson. The Cardinals also haven't to this point re-signed Kaiser White, who played a lot of snaps for them last year. So there's opportunity available. We'll see where Cody Simon goes. Other guys that I'm intrigued by, Teddy Buchanan going to the Ravens in round 4. Danny Stutzman, who we talked about in the pre-draft show, landed with the Saints in round 4. We would have liked to see him go earlier, but the landing spot is pretty good, especially for the longer term. Nick Martin to the 49ers in round 3 could have opportunity next to Fred Warner right away. So that'll be a spot to watch. I'm going to write more about those guys in the updated IDP rookie rankings article, but I'm going to highlight Chris Paul Jr. in this spot. Pooh to those who know him from Ole Miss. He went to the Rams late in round 5. They traded up to be able to take him there. A 3-year starter in the SEC, 2 of those at Arkansas, 1 at Ole Miss, redshirted in 2021, but then a freshman All-American right away as a 2022 starter, 2nd team All-SEC and 3rd team All-American this past season, led Ole Miss in tackles in his only season there. Certainly helped by playing behind a terrific Ole Miss defensive line. They got 3 guys drafted, Walter Nolan in round 1, Princely Umanmielen in round 3, and then JJ Pegas in round 6. He lands in a Rams defense, though, that has that same benefit for him, a young, very good defensive line. So that should help. The drawback with Paul is that he's very small, 6'1", 222 pounds. That's 3rd percentile weight among off-ball linebackers historically. Good enough speed, 71st percentile 40, but that's a below average speed score when you apply it to his lightweight. Hyper productive in college, though. And that included at least 6.5 tackles for loss each of the past 3 years. So even though he was small, made plays coming forward and shows that he's not scared to take on that contact and go after the ball. Career high 11 tackles for loss this past year, 9.5 career sacks, defensed 5 passes this past season at Ole Miss, and earned high-level PFF grades, both versus the run and versus the pass. It's possible that Paul plays a bit too hard for his size in the NFL. It might make him an injury risk if he does get on the field enough, Shane, but I'll take a productive later linebacker who might get injured some over an earlier drafted guy who's bigger, but a meh prospect like we talked about with Demetrius Knight.
I agree. We've seen those outliers in terms of size have some success at the NFL level. Chris Paul was a player that when I first watched him, I was like, write him off. No way. And then the more you watch, the more the instincts and the violence and the hands and the vision, just being able to read where the running back's going and what the quarterback's doing, it really plays out. Like, he's a really good player, just is not big. His arms are short. He's not overly fast, but I think it can work at the NFL level with that defensive line in front of him with the right support system. So I'll be interested to see if he can crack his way into that Rams lineup. If there's an injury in front of him, it could be one of those situations where Chris Paul is just too good and he earns himself some time.
Yeah, and there's immediate opportunity there even. Like he has a shot to win that job if he proves ready and if he proves big enough. If you're just finding us and want to hear our takes on the offensive guys from this draft, you can find plenty of rookie content on our YouTube channel or your favorite audio platform. Make sure you subscribe and follow, stay on top of fresh content. We've got a rookie mock draft show coming with a special guest early next week. 2 shows every week beyond that throughout the year, and with some extra stuff sprinkled in here and there, especially on the YouTube channel. So make sure you're following along. Shane, let's shift to edge now. The first round at edge versus the second round seemed kind of goofy to me in this draft. A bunch of guys that we talked about ahead of it. So, we gave our takes on some of the prospects, but it looks to me like the NFL kind of eschewed college production and chased physical traits with this group. In that first round, we had Abdul Carter go to the Giants at 3, not surprising at all. But then Mykel Williams was the next edge off the board to the Niners at 11. Jalen Walker to the Falcons at 15. Shamar Stewart to the Bengals at 17. There's that other iffy Cincinnati pick that we were talking about. And James Pierce to the Falcons at 26 after a trade up. So the Falcons made Pierce a late first round pick. They gave a 7th rounder this year and next year's first round pick to move up 20 spots. They also did get a 3rd round pick back. So, that softens the blow a little bit, but a first rounder next year is a pretty big price to give up for a guy that we expect to be a part-timer in the league. Very skinny is James Pierce. And the other guys, like I said, athletic traits are there, but not a whole lot of production for Shamar Stewart, Mykel Williams. Jalen Walker productive, but has the question about his size.
It is an interesting group where this many edge players going in the first round, usually from an IDP perspective, be like, all right, great, I'm all in. And looking at this group outside of Abdul Carter, who I think can be an elite player, I'm not overly thrilled with anyone. Either it's Mykel Williams or Shamar Stewart that didn't have the college production. I don't buy the NFL talent, or it's Jalen Walker and James Pierce going to the same team and Walker being undersized, Pierce probably being a pure pass rusher. It just doesn't feel great from an IDP perspective for these first round rookies. Not someone I'm going to invest a high rookie pick in on any of my teams, probably.
And then looking at the guys who went in round 2 at the position, I like the group better in round 2 collectively. We'll see about the immediate return on these guys, but I think longer term, I'd probably bet on this group to be collectively more productive. We're looking at Donovan Ezeiruaku, JT Tuimoloau, Nic Scourton, Oluwafemi Oladejo, and Mike Green. Obviously, Mike Green's biggest issue, not on the field. Who's your favorite guy among that group of round 2 edge players?
It was difficult to pick, like you. I liked all of these players, and if they get an opportunity, I think they can hit. I really like Nic Scourton, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M, who went to the Carolina Panthers, who we didn't talk about much pre-draft, mostly because of the role. It seems like they're talking him up into being more that stand-up outside linebacker, probably at this point behind Jadeveon Clowney, who we know is heading to the end of his career, and Scourton should be able to take over for that. Now, they did draft another edge in Princely Umanmielen later in the next round, but they'll probably play some different roles. I think Scourton has that athletic upside that we've seen, has flashed some of the production. He's been a little inconsistent there, but with his size at 257 pounds, I think he's someone that can set the edge in that stand-up role. And to me, in IDP, I just like when a player is standing up, kind of, I get a defensive end on my roster, and he's playing stand-up linebacker and doing some linebacker things as well. And it seems like Nic Scourton versus some of these other edge rushers in the second round has that opportunity.
And certainly opportunity in Carolina where they could use a pass rush upgrade. My favorite is Donovan Ezeiruaku, 12th pick of round 2, going to Dallas, 6th edge off the board in this draft. The downside, he's small for the position. We talked about that, but the upside is quite literally everything else about him. He has an 85th percentile wingspan, first off, despite that 19th percentile height. So like, if you look at his whole body, he's small, but then he puts his arms out and it's like, oh my God, that guy could probably fly. 91st percentile 3-cone drill. So that shows he can bend the edge well. 77th percentile speed score, even with the adjustment for the Pro Day 40. Very productive in college, as we discussed before, both as a pass rusher and a run defender. And that's key here because it could put Ezeiruaku on the field much more. It could make him an every down player early on if he proves, physically up for that in a Cowboys defense that's very needy on the edges. Better draft capital would have been nice, like if he got into round 1, but fairly early in round 2. And he was always generally viewed as a more likely second round pick, probably because of that size primarily. I at least like Ezeiruaku as much now as I did heading into the draft, when I already liked him as a higher floor guy in this edge group for sure.
I think there's dominant potential with him on the Cowboys if he shows that he can rush the passer. And what do? You gotta put two guys on Micah Parsons, and so Ezeiruaku one-on-one on the outside just could be extremely dangerous. It wouldn't surprise me if he starts immediately and produces immediately, especially in the sack department. He was just a terror at getting pressure at Boston College, and I think it's going to translate really well to the NFL.
Post round 2 sleeper candidates on the edge. We talked about Landon Jackson on our previous edge preview show. Love his landing spot in Buffalo in early round 3. But Shane, tell me what Buckeye you like as a sleeper on the edge.
No Buckeye. We're going small school with David Walker, edge rusher out of Central Arkansas. Someone that I identified years ago. I was like, this guy's going to be an NFL player. Goes in round 4 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And you and I talked about him when we were down in Savannah for the draft, just about the production, 3 years in Central Arkansas, 191 tackles, 31 sacks, 263 pounds. He has the size, and at 6'1", he has kind of a lower pad level. I think it's going to take some time. He's a round 4 pick coming out of a small school. Is not someone I expect to necessarily start this season, but is going to back up Hassan Reddick, who's going to be a free agent after this year. The Buccaneers re-sign Anthony Nelson, who's a free agent after 2026. I think Walker has the production, has some of the explosiveness and athletic ability at the size. He's a player after my rookie draft I'm going to quietly sign in free agency and stash on the taxi squad on my fantasy team for a year. And I think it could pay off if he earns the kind of that big outside linebacker role that they like in the Buccaneers.
Yeah, I like when we get a later round pick that you can explain why they were in the later round, like Pooh Paul for the Rams. For what it's worth, I think we got to separate that nickname from the last name to make sure that people understand it's Pooh and not Poop. But, for him going in round 5, we can say it's because he's tiny. For David Walker, we can say it's probably because he's coming from a small school. Otherwise, he looks like a good prospect. He's got the speed score to go along with that production, and likely just needs to show that he can do it against the higher level of competition. You mentioned why he doesn't need to do it right away in Tampa Bay. So yeah, certainly should be a good stash. I'm going to highlight Jordan Burch here. Start with how he entered. 14th pick of round 3 to Arizona, the 14th edge player off the board. One of the biggest guys to carry an edge designation in this class that has a whole lot of small pass rushing candidates. 6'4", 279, but still ran a 4.67 40. That's a 74th percentile 40-yard dash among edges. Gives him a 91st percentile speed score when you apply the weight. He's a little old, already 23 and a half, but we've seen more of that lately with the COVID effect, probably some effect from college players now being able to make money there. We're going to have to see going forward if we need to totally shift our age expectations and evaluations, or if there's, more of a COVID effect than other things. So we'll see about that. What I like about Burch is just that. The talent is there. He was a 5-star recruit back in 2020, ranked ahead of classmates Bijan Robinson, Will Anderson Jr., Jalen Carter, all 3 of which are already pretty good at the NFL level. Also played tight end and running back in high school, as well as being a standout basketball player. So a very good athlete. Now, the downside is kind of Jordan Burch didn't do a whole lot with that high level of talent. 3 years at South Carolina, was not a full-time starter until his final year there. 7.5 plus tackles for loss each of the past 3 years, 8.5 sacks in his final season. But that was his first year in college with more than 3.5 sacks. So I really would have liked to see more production for a guy with that talent level. The reason I'm highlighting him here is because, Shane, if Burch was a first round pick like Shamar Stewart, I'd be like, nah, I'm a little skeptical of this guy. But because he slipped to round 3, it's a little bit easier to just say, yeah, but I like that one thing. Let's see if he develops. He's, of course, going to go later in rookie drafts because of going later in the NFL draft. So at that stage, it's easier to just take a shot on something that makes sense, and you're not really losing much if it doesn't work out.
I like Burch. He just has to find a spot. It's just where you play him. Do you play him inside? Do you play him outside? Do you stand him up a little bit? He's kind of that classic tweener where nothing quite makes sense, but he's good at everything. And you feel like you have that, like you said, the 279. It'll be interesting to see if the Cardinals try to adjust that weight at all to position. But the athleticism, the explosion, the speed, I think that's all going to stay or even get better if he sheds a little bit of weight. There's a ton of potential here. And I'm with you. These are the guys that are going late in your rookie draft or not at all in your rookie draft that you could pick up and just sit on and see what happens. And if Jordan Burch hits, I mean, Jordan Burch is going to really hit. So it's worth a shot.
And there's room for him to hit early if he is going to hit and if he develops quickly in Arizona, because they could use upgrades all along the defensive line wherever he manages to fit. Check out the IDP rookie rankings on draftsharks.com now. And even better, sync your IDP Dynasty League to get the full benefit of our projections and tools. That's going to allow you to apply your league's specific scoring and lineup settings, which differ even more in IDP than they do on the offensive side. It'll let the draft war room account for your existing roster and the way that your specific rookie draft is flowing as you go. It's also going to unlock the entire suite of dynasty management tools that we have built, that we're continuing to build out, and that we're constantly enhancing. Why do we keep working on those tools and delivering fresh content in Dynasty and other formats? It's because we want to make sure that Draft Sharks is always your unfair advantage.